A week ago, the national chairman of the All Progressives Congress, Adamu, resigned following a reported fallout with the party leadership. Reports say he and his national secretary, Yola Omishori, were compelled to throw in the towel on the order of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who did not seem to fancy their continuous stay as the APC leaders. In another development, the House of Representatives has taken steps to stop the move to cede Denare and Biajua communities in the Boki local government area of Cross River State through Pillar 113A to the Republic of Cameroon. The House took the decision when it unanimously adopted a motion jointly sponsored by members of the House from Cross River at plenary. Well, joining us now is a former member of the Cross River State House of Assembly and member Publicity Committee of the defunct APC-PCC, Kletos Obun. He will be discussing why former APC National Chairman Adamu fell out of favor with the party leaders and, of course, the bid by Cameroonian authorities to annex Bajwa in Cross River State. It's good afternoon and welcome to Arise News.
Thanks for having me, and we have risen today once again.
All right, then. So let's talk about, the role or exactly why we're seeing the APC party chairman in this situation. Now, the widely suspected reason was the role that Adamu played in the run-up to last year's APC convention, which nominated Tinubu as the presidential candidate at the time. Now, two things in particular. One was his statement, only days to the convention, that the then aspirant Tinubu will be sanctioned for his Abeokuta speech, which was seen then as a thinly veiled attack on President Buhari. More recently, or more seriously, Adamu tried to convince the working committee to adopt then Senate President Ahmed Lawal as consensus presidential candidate. Now, all of those acts leading up to now, would you say that these two reasons were enough to have him removed as the party chairman?
Well, let me put this on record. The resignation of Adamu could have been for personal reasons. The speculation about the reasons for his resignation, for me, at this point, would be overflogging the issue. But in the public interest, as journalists, as inquisitive and investigative as you want to be, it will be in the national interest, in the interest of the media, to allow the polity deal with the issues of fuel scarcity, removal, the palliatives. But at the party, of course, if the party is not stable, I agree with you, definitely the country and all the economy and every other sector of the economy of the country will be in trouble, security and all that. So it will require the stability of the ruling party. So the interest in what is happening in that party, in the APC, is understandable. But let me say that Adamu, like I said here before, was long overdue, not just because of the comments he made about the Abeokuta statement, nor also about the issue of adopting unilaterally the former Senate president for presidential candidate, but more essentially on account of his unpreparedness for the office of a ruling party. That is what everybody is sweeping under the carpet and looking for the superficial reasons. The reasons being tendered and bandied about clearly cannot be sufficient, but they were contributory. The fundamental thing was, for instance, National Working Committee members will tell you, and even NEC members will tell you that there was never a meeting and decisions were never taken by that organ of the party. Almost all organs of the party became completely comatose. There were no meetings to take decisions in a run-up to a general election that was so tense and was so competitive. Never in our history. In fact, the nearest it was 2003, which was about 20 years ago, that we ever had this type of election in which there was tension and there was a near balance of power between the political parties that were acting then. In 2003, it was AMPP versus PDP. In 2023, you saw 8 political parties out of 18 becoming very, very active in the field. So we needed a leader in the party that would stabilize it, because every other person, one, there was a lame duck president going out, and then there was the agitation for candidacy. So at that point, the party leadership became the pivot upon which the party was going to survive. Adamu didn't provide that, and every member of the party would tell you so. Secondly, there were issues of probity and accountability within the party. Of course, you should know that no member of the political party is ever on the payroll of the party. Nobody pays them. Therefore, their welfare is an internal affair of the party and how it operates and how it coordinates itself. You saw that very well under Oshomole. Under Adamu, it became nearly absent. In fact, it was totally absent, and members complained openly. The only person who walked into the podium, into the playground to carry a megaphone was the Northwest president, vice chairman, who came out clearly to say there is a problem and there's fire on the mountain. And because people didn't want to be distracted, they kept him on there. So I'm saying that he overstayed and that he didn't put up the kind of leadership that will see us even stabilize the polity after elections. Before the elections, during the elections, and after the elections, leadership vacuum was very self-evident. And there is no party that wants to lead and that wants to stabilize a country that is in need of both governance and party leadership that will tolerate that level of ineptitude, that level of laxity, that level of unaccountability, and that level of near comatose in which the party found itself under an Adamu leadership. So clearly, he needed to go, and he had to go. And because the engine room of all political parties is the secretariat, that is the secretary of the party, because he couldn't call him to order and couldn't provide an alternative, he had to go with him. So it is very clear, and we have nothing to beat about, and we have no regret. For us in APC, we are looking forward about who replaces him, who are the two replacements to do what we are expecting them to do, and which is the national secretary. And for me, the president cannot sit aloof at this point to pretend that it doesn't matter who sits in office as national chairman and secretary. He must have an interest. Party stakeholders, especially the national caucus of the party, which is the conscience of the party, the board of trustees who have not been sworn in, all these organs have not been sworn in all these years. They must have to come out now and show us who our president will be. And that president, that chairman of the party must be the kind of person that will create a synergy between parliament and the government and the executive, and of course create a synergy also within the party itself, so that there will be a focus on how to provide the dividends of democracy to Nigerians. The issue of internal party crisis should not take place, should not replace the governance that we promised as a party. We've won the elections. Nigerians are waiting for us to deliver. It is not about who is going to be national chairman. Therefore, the national chairman that is going to replace Adamu and the secretary must be men of proven integrity in terms of organizational powers. We are not looking for a saint. Saints live in heaven. Saints live in heaven. Saints don't live on earth. So every man will carry his own baggage. But that baggage should not obliterate and override the leadership that the party now requires. That is where we are now. And for us in APC and for the government, I believe that President Ahmed Bola Tinubu, who has been in the forefront of leading the party, he has been party leader all through from ACN till today. He now knows the kind of person that can work with him so that he will keep focus on the Nigerian ball rather than going to settle party squabbles. This is not the time for the president to be distracted with internal party squabbles on account of ineptitude or inefficiency in the running of the party. I think that is where we are now, and I believe that the press and the media especially must help us to stabilize the party in a manner that will do it. That we continue to enjoy rancor and then survive in it should not become the norm. Let us please focus. All the parties are in trouble, from SDP to PDP to the national chairman of PDP resigned. The national chairmanship of SDP is in crisis. And APC is the only one that is stable in spite of the removal of the resignation of the chairman and the secretary. You can see some modicum of stability. It is now the replacement that should be our focus. And that is where we are now.
The political parties definitely do seem like they are in crisis, but you were speaking about integrity earlier on. Just to add to the laundry list of alleged crimes of the former chairman was the 80 billion naira that was earned through the nomination form sales that apparently have not been accounted for, and those expression of interest forms, and the absence of the quarterly reports of the income expenditure for the party. And I say that because, just like you said, saints do not necessarily work in government. They're in heaven. They're in other places. They're definitely not in Nigeria or the government. So our expectations of them should be adjusted. And we shouldn't be distracted by the APC's internal squabbles, as it seems that the country has its own very serious internal squabbles, external squabbles. How
How will the party move to deal with both of these very tricky situations that are happening, not only within their party, but also in Nigeria as a whole? There might be some sentiment that they might not be able to get themselves together in order to deal with this awful cost of living crisis. And even if there were palliatives to distribute on behalf of the ruling party for the Nigerian populace, there's fear that there would be grand misappropriation, as has been the modus operandi for a long time, especially even within the party, as the chairman was allegedly caught red-handed. Your thoughts?
Please, let me not get into the auditing, because the internal mechanism for auditing our accounts and income and expenditure and mode of expenditure and how and who are signatories to the party are clearly stated out in our party constitution. Therefore, if there are issues about misappropriation of funds and other things, that he has resigned will not in any way exculpate him, because crime in our land, within our jurisprudence, does not have an expiry date. You can live for 5, 10 years, you will still be brought back. And of course, our jurisprudence have a way of dealing with that. And within our own country and within the context of our party, I do not imagine that the sale of funds and the finances that emanated from the last elections could become a crisis that will make us to get into another bout of distraction. So the national chairman and whoever is involved in the appropriation of the funds that were generated from the last election, sale of funds, expression of interest, and other such donations and levies, which are other means of generating income for the party. If there are any such incomes, a transparent way of doing so is going to be accounted for by the next audit team, because our party constitution provides for an independent audit panel to audit the accounts and present it, and it ought to be presented quarterly and yearly. So at every quarter, you are supposed to bring your income and expenditure. Then you have an audited account every year that is brought before the National Executive Committee of the party. And thereafter, it is ratified at the National Convention. So we are not having any crisis about how to audit our accounts and what did not happen to the account. The major question which you have raised, which is of interest and should be of interest to Nigerians, is the issue of how to manage the crisis Nigeria is going through now, because we are going into the bed pangs of a new era, of a new dawn, which is that with the removal of oil subsidy, the ripple effects of that removal is what we are dealing with now. You can discover now that the security issue is almost now being swallowed and overrun and overwhelmed by the effect of oil subsidy removal. So what to do? The palliatives is only one tiny aspect of remediation for this particular economic revolution. It is a near earthquake and everybody is in tatters. Now you don't expect that under those conditions a leader should go and be discussing party politics. And which is why, as I sit here this afternoon, I want to assure Nigerians that this president is not sleeping. Between now and Friday, the list of ministers will come. Between the last 60 days, we are almost on the 54th or 55th day, 54 days today, or 54 days, 57. We are, by Friday to be 29th, you have 30 days on the 29th, but it will end on Friday, 28th. So a list of ministers must come. Only the permanent secretaries are operating. The only functional governmental institution is the Secretary to Government of the Federation and the President and permanent secretaries, who can do very little. So even the production of a database, you remember that the committee that the President set up has even rejected the last database of the social investment programs that were done by the last regime on account of the point you have just made, which is about the credibility of that register. So if you are going to create a new register, again, that will take more time. So when people are expecting so much in 60 days, because of the way this president has inundated the space with so much activity and enthusiasm and excitement, everybody is imagining that we have been here for 2 years. So 2 months is looking like 2 years because there's so much activity going on. And because of that, I will plead with our fellow countrymen that they must understand that we cannot fix what we are doing now in 30 days. At least a minimum of 6 months, there should be a stability when the ministers have taken over. And I'm sure that the president, in nominating his ministers, is going to give and plead with the National Assembly to take less time in clearing them so that in screening them, whoever qualifies should be immediately brought so that they can start work, while those who are dropped can be replaced later on, so our government can kick off. It is nearly impossible for the governor, for the president or the governor to take off without commissioners or without ministers, as in this case. So I don't see that we are in danger. On the contrary, we have more hope, and indeed, we are more confident in this president, who came in prepared and demonstrated it by the actions he is taking. The committee system, the interactive sessions, you can see within the next 48 hours, he's going to talk to nobody except to look through the files and see what he's going to do with his ministerial list and all that. He's been doing that in the last 54 days or 58 days. Now, in doing that, where are we? In the interest of the federation, in the interest of our polity, in the interest of our own people, especially the common people who are feeling the terrible pangs of the subsidy removal, what we should be giving to ourselves is confidence and trust that government will do its best. And if you remember, when he said 8,000 per household for 12 million household, there was an outcry. There were suggestions. There were inputs. He immediately dropped it and said the outcry, he means that he's a listening president. He has now heard the cries of the people and say it has been dropped. Yet, people are still drumming it as if he has not responded to the demands and to the requests of the populace. People have told him, and everybody has written, experts have made the point, and the ordinary person have said, if you give to 12 million people in 6 months or in 1 year, what happened to the remainder of the population of over 180-something million people? If you are taking just 12 million, 188 million people are going to be without money, without anything, and without even the palliative that you are talking about. And let me make this point about the organized labor and the civil population. I am not comfortable that we are not discussing the main issues. People are working in NNPC. NNPC is refining oil, no oil. So what are they doing in those offices in NNPC? Just occupying offices and collecting salaries. We just got a breakdown here, which I'm yet to confirm, that the 3 refineries combined, we are taking money in trillions to pay workers. And yet, no drop of oil is refined in Nigeria. They are not the experts in the creeks that are getting the crude out. They are not the ones exporting it. Just sitting in the office in the name of NNPC, collecting trillions in the name of the... Why is Labour not asking those questions? What are they receiving salaries for when there is no oil being refined in the refineries? How will a President Buhari be a commissioner of, then they call them commissioners in 1976, and bring oil from Port Harcourt to Kaduna and become president for Asia, and none of the refineries can produce a drop of oil? These are questions to be raised. It is not enough to talk about palliatives. Palliatives are only a stopgap. They cannot permanently solve our problem. We must look for a permanent solution to this crisis. And those are questions I expect Labour Union. I came from the Labour background, so I'm pained that the main issues are not being discussed. You are busy talking about salary increase. Once you increase salaries, price of food will also increase. So you are not going to ever have salaries that will ever earn you and give you a good living condition. It will never meet your standard. So what should be done is what is being put on ground to act as sustainable palliatives. The roads, the railways, the bus, the vehicular transport on the road, and of course, ease of doing business. That I'm going to be selling Gary from Cross River State, I'll bring Gary from Bumaji to Abuja. How much is that will it cost me on the road? If I pay so much transport, it means the price of Gary will go up, and all that. We must look at all these indices. We must look at all these issues that will bring about a better living condition for people. It's not only in Nigeria. Remember recently in France, in the UK, people are going on strike on account of living conditions. But the Nigerian situation is remediable. The Nigerian can be mitigated. And we have the means, we have the materials, we have the natural resources, we have the human capital to be able to deal with our situation and our condition. Definitely. It is only a question of courage by the leadership. And this president, I am very sure, has taken off very well. 2 months is too short for us to start being judgmental. Thank you. 2 months is too short. Yes. And I plead with Nigerians to take it easy.
Yes, Mr. Obun, I completely understand your sentiments, but the reason why these questions are coming up is because APC itself hasn't offered any explanation for the 2 top national officers' sudden resignation. But let's move on to something that, like you said, has to do with the Nigerian people. We're looking at the House of Representatives that has recently opposed alleged moves to cede some communities in Cross River State to the neighboring Republic of Cameroon. Now, if you throw back to to October 10, 2002, where we saw the International Court of Justice ruling that the Bakassi Peninsula belonged to Cameroon based on an agreement between the Nigerian and Cameroonian governments during the Civil War. Then in July 2012, the Supreme Court ruled that the Cross River State had lost ownership rights to over 76 oil wells due to the loss of the peninsula to Cameroon. Now, how should the ICJ ruling, or how would the ICJ ruling help in retracing the Cameroon-Nigeria international boundary line from Lake Chad region to the Atlantic Ocean? And what should the two newly United Nations committees do, or what they need to do to implement this judgment going forward?
Yes, there are 3 steps I'm going to take in tackling this issue, because I've been deeply involved in the research and in dealing with that community I talk about is my community. I'm a Boki man. And Danara and Biajwa have been in the news since October 10, 2000. I was then in Parliament. 3 persons from Nigeria were arrested. 1 from Imo State, 1 from Akwa Ibom State, the other 2 from Cross River State, Boki people. They were farming, and gendarmes arrested them on the Nigerian side of River Baje and took them to Bamenda for trial, to Buya for trial. I raised alarm that this was against international law and that our people are going to be annexed, and Cameroon has an ambition to annex parts of Nigeria. At that point, there was not judgment by the International Court. I told Nigeria this. I was invited by the Director of Military Intelligence in Nigeria. I came to Abuja, and I told them, this is my suspicion and this is my experience coming from this community that share boundary with Cameroon. Nigeria treated the matter with kid gloves. The next thing we saw was Nigeria going into a matter that had no business with Cameroon. If you know the historical background to this Bakassi ceding, you will be pained as a Nigerian. And at that time, I had called that President Obasanjo should be tried for treason for, first of all, carrying Nigeria to go into the International Court. They had a choice not to appear in the International Court because the plebiscite of 1961, October 11, did not include Bakassi. Bakassi at that point was a trustee state of the United Nations. So he didn't participate in that plebiscite. So as what was Nigeria or Cameroon laying claim to it? And that was why Buhari in 1983 refused to accept any discussion on the Bakassi Peninsula and carried out what then was called Operation Sea Dog, if you recall. That was the genesis of that crisis. And Cameroon now, under the French influence, because it is a French colony and France still has occupational and territorial control of its own colonies, unlike Britain that has allowed its own independent colonies to go and fend for it themselves. The French still have overriding control to the point where even the economies are run from Paris. Now, on this ground, they proceeded to go to court when we were not supposed to go to ICJ, because Cameroon just joined ICJ for the purpose of annexing and acquiring Bakassi. 3 ways by which you could have acquired the territory, either by historical antecedent or being resident of the area, by conquest of war, or by law. Now, we have no business going to court because ICJ has the option of you accepting to go and accept that the judgment will be binding on you or not. Nigeria was only the 3rd country to go into that court, get a judgment, and start implementation to the point of getting the Green Tree Agreement. Till today, the National Assembly of Nigeria has not ratified that Green Tree Agreement. Yet Nigeria proceeds with its officials in the commission, the National Boundaries Commission, and the Solicitor General of the Federation, and Attorney General of the Federation, then Adoke. I appeared before the Senate Committee in 2013 and in July of 2014 on this same issue before the National Assembly. I was there again on Thursday last week when the House Special Committee, headed by Right Honorable Benny Lar, on Thursday, just 4 days ago, came out with this same issue. And we said Pillar 113A is in contention. We cannot find it. It is on your map. You are the one tracing it. Why are you interested in saying that the tracing of that pillar goes horizontal against the stream, the Baje River, which joins the Cross River, rather than go vertically down the stream, however it takes its course, you are looking for it horizontally 9.6 kilometers away from the stream into the Nigerian territory. Why do you think that Pillar 113A is not in the Cameroon territory? And Cameroon has never raised any issue on this. It is only the Nigerian government and its officials bent on taking us out of Nigeria. We are Nigerians. And I made a point to them. If they don't want us in Nigeria, they should say so. We will not even join Cameroon. We are big enough. Between Bakassi and Buki is more than Seychelles Island, Gabon, and Equatorial Guinea combined in terms of landmass. That territory is bigger than those 3 countries and in population bigger than them. So we can declare our own country if you don't want us to be Nigerians. Because there is no reason why it is Nigerian officials that are insisting on 113A is in Nigeria. And they told you on the map, the Anglo-Nigerian, Anglo-German treaty of 2013. When they signed the agreement in 2013, by 2014, the First World War broke out.
Right.
Germany was defeated. By 2018, there was a Treaty of Versailles. At that point, could that 2013 agreement between England and Germany still be binding?
Yeah.
In 2018 there was the partitioning of Africa.
I'm going to jump in and
so
interrupt you.
Where
the history of where we are with this case is certainly long and intriguing. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, Mr. Kletos Obun.